Okay, but my question is for Hein. But the little booklet here gives a total of about 1.5 million, 1.551 million. How quickly can we, if I join the cause, but how quickly can you mobilize to get in touch with those 1.5, or get at least that many people to give the go-ahead?
As long as they're rope. It all depends on two things. How much money have you got to get to those people? And we've set ourselves out many years ago not to get money from the public. So yes, that was perhaps not the best decision, but if the word can spread, theoretically, if you make the calculation of 10 people and each 10 must tell 10, you can have it within 2 weeks. The problem is getting to all those people. Because even if we use this specific group here, and we call it we fish in different ponds, I think the ponds that we fish in have been exhausted. There's no fish in it anymore. But if you go to this group, you might get in another 150,000 people. And then it's also exhausted. So you've got to keep on going. And therefore, the answer is, I can't tell you. It can take a month, and it can take, let me give you a clever answer, too long.
I think something that's important to mention is the fact that to a certain extent, people don't realize, they see what's going on in the country, they realize there's a problem, they need a solution. But to a certain extent, if my learned colleagues would agree, people don't want to accept that little bit of responsibility that say, I have a responsibility to support this, because if I don't, we have a problem.
I don't know if I missed this earlier, but have you done any recent scientific polling of your support in the Western Cape? By which I mean an internationally recognized polling system. To all of you, the real question is, so how much actual support have you got based on realistic polling?
The realistic actual support, you can go on to ulacongress.com or vote for self-determination.co.za, because it's updated daily. We are standing at 216,066 votes, which is just more than 10%. Not close enough.
I wanted to touch on that first question about how long it might take. It really is a tough question to answer. And I think that this is a game of chess here. And it really depends on how radical and extreme the ANC and the EFF want to go. The ball is in their court. There would be no Cape Party. There would be no Capexit. There would be no ULA. And other people that believe as deeply as we all do in Cape independence, if there wasn't expropriation without compensation, crime rate through the roof, farm murders, junk status economy, the endless list, we all know it. So it depends how rapidly the ANC and the EFF ratchet up their offensive and oppressive policies, and I think we'll see a direct correlation with how quickly we see an uprising within the people of the Cape to support Cape independence. So the ball's in their court. If they want to make life as miserable as possible, it's going to happen quicker. If they want to negotiate, maybe we have a federal type system, it could take a lot longer, who knows. With regards to support, the Cape Party we increased our support fourfold in the last election from 2016 to 2019, getting 10,000 voters in this last election. Our intentions are never really to contest national elections just because of the cost of entry and also the dynamics. It's a really expensive objective to contest elections. So, but if we extrapolate where we are on the national and provincial level, through to, in 2 years from now, the 2021 municipal and local elections, which is really what I think as libertarian free thinkers, politics is local. It comes down to the grassroots. And if you extrapolate the numbers we got on a grassroots level, we are guaranteed to get in 2021, if not multiple seats, not just in Cape Town, but around many areas in the Cape, the broader Cape region, which would fit in very neatly with our strategy to attack from a number of different angles. So it's looking very positive.
In terms of support base, we build support over the total spectrum of indigenous peoples and the minority groups. For us, the support does not lie in a Facebook group, because a lot of the communities you reach out to has not got access to Facebook, to WhatsApp. It's a one-on-one support kind of thing where you physically go with a hard copy of a form and you give it to a person and they register their support. So taking that into account, taking the feedback we get from our area managers and the activists that's out there, we are well in the excess of 150,000 at the moment. That is a constant battle.
Hi.
Yeah, just to make that clear, if we talk about support, which is one of these incredibly unexplainable things in life, through our alliance partners, we've got over 500,000 members, but they don't even go and take the 30 seconds to go and vote. The reality is it's worthless. I can't say 500,000 because it doesn't mean anything. We're talking about 216,000 people that are physically, because that is one of the international requirements, that have put their names on paper and said, yes, I want independence.
So, okay, so I really admire what you guys are doing, and I think it's a fantastic strategy to get behind.
Have you voted?
Sorry?
Have you voted?
Not yet. But I have attempted to open the conversation with people in Johannesburg, and I'm talking, you know, with largely the white population. You can understand, well, I've opened it on all sides, and actually the response has been largely consistent, which is that that's not something I would consider. It's based on race. It's a racist endeavor, and they basically are lumping anybody asking for secession in with the same kind of mindset as Oranje, you know, and this kind of like Afrikaner nationalist idea. And I think that that's probably your biggest obstacle to getting the following that you need. So I have two parts to the question. One is, how much do you perceive that that is actually a prevalent sentiment in the Cape? That's an obstacle. And the question number two would be, how are you campaigning to defeat that impression?
Yeah, it's very convenient for the ANC and the EFF to implement policies to call for the widespread murder of parents, daughters, sons, pets, if they happen to belong to a specific ethnic group. We have not called for the slaughter of all whites yet, to implement the types of policies that we've seen in this country. And then a group of people say, wait a second, you guys are racist. What? Are you calling us racist? If you're white and you're calling us racist, you must be a racist. The hypocrisy is unbelievable. These people are so fascist, so Nazi-like in their behavior, it's terrifying. And if anyone has seen videos of some of these rallies and the types of things that they say, how they could have any moral high ground to call organizations like ourselves that are calling for the most ethnically diverse region, not just in South Africa, but in most of the world, that we are calling for the reinstating or the true instating of a rainbow nation in the territory which is a true rainbow nation. And the Cape was founded on different cultures, different ethnicities, The majority population is a mixed ethnic group population with roots going back to Indonesia, Malaysia, Khoisan, Dutch, French. The Afrikaans language is exactly that. We came from a trade route. And so to argue that Cape independence would in any way be a racially driven thing, the only way that Cape independence is racial in the sense that we're trying to break away from the racist policies of the national government.
I just want to briefly go back to the point of support. If you look at support and you have X number of people supporting it, the critical factor of that is how many people in the area that wishes to secede is supporting it, or are supporting it. I can say I have 2 million support worldwide, but I need to focus on the support, in our case, from the Western Cape. So our focus is mainly on driving and gaining that support in the Western Cape. It's no use for me sitting with 3,000 people in Johannesburg that supports the cause. It is good from the awareness point of view, but not at the end of the day from the person that's allowed to go and vote in a referendum. On the point of racism, Capexit is very simple on that. We want the independence of the Western Cape for all who lives within. This is not a race thing. This is a corrupt, ineffective, inept government thing. That is our point of view in terms of racism.
Okay, seeing that this is tit for tat. Who of you know that there are more Jews living outside of Israel than in Israel? The support that we want based on international law, you can live wherever you want to. Irrelevant. To answer your question, the vice president of the ULA is a Khoisan. And the sad thing is, you're not the first person, and I mean, it's not you. You've experienced it. But the sad thing is that if you want to break something down, Jack has basically said the same, then just call them a racist. That's the easiest. The reality is that we are not even close to racists. Not even close. But how do you fight that? You can't. No, I'm not a racist. Let's move on. And then they will jump up again. So you can't say anything.
Thank you. I just want to know, at this stage we see a lot of things happening over the world, like Brexit. We saw the Scots lost their referendum. So it's a lot of game that's actually going to put at the whole momentum. You need to play everything and bring everything together to actually get to that point. My worry in this whole process of there is a story behind what happened in South Africa caused by Constant Viljoen that got that thing negotiated. And that process, my question will be, how does that process influence us going forward to succeed? I mean, the reality was that Constant Viljoen made the agreement with the government, America, Britain, and the ANC, to create a council. That council sat for 5 years, paid by the Mandela government, to come up with a solution to an Afrikaner Volksstaat. Eventually, they decided in Urania. Now, Peter Groenewald from Freedom Front stood up in Parliament saying to Ramaphosa, we need to start negotiating that process again. How is that going to influence the way forward from your point of view?
Okay. You're talking about the accord that was signed the 23rd of April 1994. The history of that accord, I think just 2 seconds on that. Constant Viljoen, at that stage as chief of the army, had 60,000 troops ready. And he made it very clear to the American ambassador, Andrews, that if the ANC does not sign that accord, he will disrupt the 27th of April elections. He will not allow it, because without that accord, there is no guarantee of freedom for his people in the country. So we've got to understand the history about it. That's why when that gentleman spoke this morning about the Second World War, I'm always very careful of that, because even in our own lifetime, we don't know what happened with Constant Viljoen 25 years ago. How do we know what happened 70 odd years ago And everybody's got their opinions. We've got to look at the facts. That's why it's important to talk to people while they're still alive. What happens in the community? Why do people do things? Because now you've got to understand, why did Constant Viljoen do it? He did it to get some agreement, and he's got it, to get some kind of security for his people. Now, that's only the basis. But going back to my speech, because that's the important thing, that is only the basis of why we want independence. But that accord was only for the Afrikaners. And in fact, it also talks about a Volksstaat. What we are fighting for, we're not using that as a legal basis. We're using international law. In fact, we also use Article 231 of the Constitution, as well as Article 233. We mention Article 235 because Article 235, if you read the whole article, the last bit says, as it must be implemented or written, something like that. Which means Article 235 is worthless. It's really worthless. But Article 231 refers to, and this is actually a very interesting thing. I was still getting to it and he told me to shut up. Article 231 actually refers to all agreements that the government signed. They must, in all circumstances, must, what is the word I'm looking for? Honor those agreements. Now, the interesting thing about that is that the 3rd of October 1994, the ANC government signed an agreement, but it was Article 1 of the International Law on Human and Political Rights. As an agreement, they signed it. Then, the 10th of December 1998, they went and they re-signed exactly the same agreement. And that agreement says, like we've explained earlier, everybody's got the right to self-determination. So that's why I say Article 235, because it's not written, is worthless. That is the basis. Not the accord, but the accord is a very emotional thing for a lot of people. And it does give the basis. Thank you.
The last question probably, just to ask you, what do you mean by putting pen to paper or name to paper, and where do you do that?
www.ulacongress.com or voteforselfdetermination.co.za. It basically just says, I want self-determination. No. If you go to that website, we will not allow you to only have 20 minutes. What was it, 30 minutes? You will spend days looking at all the paperwork, because all our legal arguments, the feasibility study, which is another thing that I didn't mention, which is part of the legal requirements, all the documentation. There's a massive amount of information there.
Thank you. How critical is the question of the area, the physical area? And I'm sorry, Dougie Shaw is not here today. Some years ago, we went on a roadshow to various Southern African countries to sell them the concept of having a 100 square kilometer enclave within their country, which would be run similar to, for instance, Monaco, with the protection of the host country, but in all other ways autonomous and independent. We got very, very close with Botswana. And in fact, it was just left. I don't think we had sufficient resources to pursue it, but it was at cabinet level there. How important is the area? Could you maybe look at something similar in a different country?
Well, if the question is, because I don't know what you mean, does it mean in terms of secession? In terms of secession, it's one of the first things that you've got to determine after you've determined which group of people you're talking about. So the area is extremely important. Okay. In terms of international law on secession, which funny enough is exactly the same as when you've got a farm. You can't just go and cut a piece off and sell it to somebody else because you want money, or alternatively, he wants to buy another piece of your farm. it must be a sustainable piece of that farm. Otherwise, you can't cut it off. It's the same with a country. You can't go and say, I want a piece of this land, like I believe a piece of here, north from here, is going to be independent, but it's going to be an country. What do they call it? Electronic country or something. It must be a sustainable country, because and there's millions, I mean, we can talk about this until Sunday today, Tuesday night. One of the important things, it must be a sustainable country where you must be able to look after your own people. It's got nothing to do with the amount of people or how big it is. It must be sustainable. Then secondly, you must provide the international community with how will you conduct business with other countries, which means they want to know, do you want to have a dictatorship, a kingdom? We've got a democracy, they say. But you've got to say that. But you've also got to say what kind of government you want and how you want it. So yes, it's very important. To have a piece of ground, like you said in Botswana, you still fall under Botswana government. If somebody gets murdered, to take an example, or there's a serious accident, which police is going to come and look at it? Botswana, in this case, South Africa. So the area obviously is extremely important. To just go and have a piece of ground somewhere in South Africa, which all of us fork in 100,000 or perhaps R1 million, a lot of us can buy quite a big piece of property, but you still fall under the ANC government. And then they change Article 25, and they don't only take your land, they even take the shirt on your back, property. Property must not be misunderstood. My watch is my property.
Well, yeah, just to answer Ron's question there, and I touched on it in my speech. The Cape Party's view is that we'll allow the democratic process to decide the territory. We have an idea what that territory might be, but it may be no one in Cape Town wants independence. No one in the Western Cape wants independence. Maybe just a little corner of the Northern Cape wants independence. We'll allow the people to determine who want to determine their own futures. So it would be an organic thing. And from a Cape Party perspective, we support devolution of power to communities regardless. We have very good relationships with the Abatembu tribe in the Eastern Cape. We've got very good relationships with the Royal Zulu House in KwaZulu-Natal. And we would fully support these communities pursuing their own self-determination. And they've got very strong reasons for it too. It's not just here in the Cape where we're disillusioned and oppressed by the ANC's policies, not just necessarily racial, but economic, that are destroying all the communities across South Africa. So it's something that could happen anywhere, and I think South Africa is ripe for multiple decentralization movements, and the Cape Party simply happens to be the vehicle which we would like to offer voters in this region to have that choice and that option.
To answer your question, we look at the importance of a geographical area in terms of how that area will fare in terms of the requirements to success. And for us, that, for starters, is the Western Cape province.
How long time do we have? I've got so much time to talk about this. Yeah, in terms of which is also important, not only the piece of ground, the area, but for instance, if you go to our website, you will find all this information. We propose a confederate system. Now, a confederate system is nothing else than the Cantonese system. In fact, the Cantonese system is an adaptation of confederalism. And what we're saying is that if the Kalahari Bushman or the Khoisan wants to go and live in the Kalahari and hunt springbok and eland or whatever, that is their culture. Let them do it. The Griqua, where do we put them? We've got to find a piece of ground for the Griqua. We've also got to find a piece of ground for the Nama. Where do you think we're going to put them? I think it's easy. We just put them in Griqualand and in Namaqualand because it's there. The Cape Peninsula is the only place where you can't say it belongs to the white or the Khoi or the San or whoever. It belongs to everybody that's been there since 1652. And in fact, in 1652, there were, and it's written down, the history is there. There was one tribe, and then sometimes others came through that lived in the Western Cape. So the Western Cape will become, according to what we propose, and we're not saying you must do it, this is what we propose. Yes, we propose a confederate system, and we propose that the Cape Peninsula becomes one of that confederate states. Because then you will have Griqualand, Namaland, Bushmanland, Kalahari, and then the Karoo and the other side towards Mossel Bay, which is the nicest area. I don't know if you've ever been there. Go and visit it. It's beautiful there. I love it. But that hasn't belonged to anybody. It's the same story that I asked Pete yesterday, and he never answered me. Show me one piece of land that was stolen, especially from now on forward. They had 25 years to say land was stolen, which they did, but they never showed the land. In fact, there are how many farms that were given to people for no other reason than for political reasons. Oh, shut up. For political reasons, nepotism, that's all it is. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we can give them a hand of applause. Well, thank you very much.